Hey, how's everyone doing? Um, Tonight it's very late. I know. Uh, it's been a long day for me. So many things have been happening, and despite it being a Sunday, it's still a work day for me. Well, I know some of you would have burning questions about this idea of a one person, 1 million all digital business. And that's what I want to get into. So, in the process of doing this, I have actually spoken to quite a number of people. At the same time, I would also want to get their feedback and what are some of the things that they are most concerned with. And so I got the few questions that I have. And in any case, if you are watching right now and if you have got a question about whether anything about this one person, 1 million all digital business, definitely drop it in the comments and I would be more than happy to answer them. And so, without further ado, let's get right into question number one. And I think question number one is probably the most frequently asked question about this whole idea of a one person, 1 million all digital business. And the question is simply this: is it possible? Well, so there are a few things that I'd like to talk about whether if this is possible or not. So first and foremost, let's set the context here. The premise is that if you are looking at the conventional way of doing business, which means you are going from a employee to a freelancer, or even if you are a sole proprietor, in other words, you need to be there in order for the transaction to go through, in order for the transaction to be completed so that you can be paid. Then it is possible, but you would have to meet this condition. So condition number one is that you have to be making $83,000 a year, a month, right? If you're making $3,000 a month, you would be able to meet the threshold of that $1 million. Now, if we break that down into hourly rates and assuming you have 8 hours every day and you work from Mondays to Fridays without any public holiday or any off day whatsoever, which means you work every day and you need and you charge an hourly rate. The hourly rate that you would have to charge is $520 an hour, right? So either way you look at this, if you are going by the way that you have to be there in order for the transaction to be completed, then obviously this $1 million threshold, it's not going to be met. I wouldn't say it's impossible. I'm just going to say that, the chances are slim to none. And even if you could make it 1 year, what are the chances that you would be able to make it in subsequent years? Well, apart from the fact that, so I mean, we could talk about other types of businesses, like you can be a real estate broker, you could be a professional engineer and all that stuff, but we're not talking about that kind of business because that kind of business doesn't give us that LIFT freedom. And if you've forgotten what LIFT freedom is, it's location, intellect, financial, and time. Those jobs or those professions still requires you to be at a specific place in order for the transaction to be completed. It still requires you to be at one place at any one point in time in order for that transaction to be completed so that you can get paid. So even if you're a professional engineer, you would actually have to go down to the site to inspect and to do all the the necessary surveillance in order for you to sign off. And so, those kind of work, we are not looking at that because, that's not the kind of lifestyle that we want. So the kind of lifestyle that we want is to be able to choose how we want to live, right? And I'm not saying that this is something that it's for everybody. Granted, some people prefer to be there in the flesh, and that's perfectly fine. But what I'm saying here is that for the rest of us who wants to build this 1 million, one person, all digital business, then those type of work have been ruled out. So, and so if we are looking at the kind of work, then obviously, this 1 million is not going to be possible. That said, if you are able to find something that it's able to help you leverage either technology or other people, then this $1 million threshold becomes highly probable. So the way to look at this is as follows. You what you want to do is in this business itself, you want to be able to look at the three A's. And so the first A is essentially you have to be creating assets, right? And the assets cannot be you. So you have to be creating assets. So the assets could be in the form of digital content. The assets could be in the form of some kind of digital product, whether it's a book, it's an audio course, it's a video, whatever the case may be. There has to be an asset. So the definition of an asset is that you will be able to create it one time and to be able to leverage that asset to earn you a return over and over and over again. So that's the key idea with that. So number one rule is that your business must have an asset. And obviously this asset ideally needs to have a marginal cost of close to zero. In other words, if you have already created an ebook and you want to sell 1,000 copy, it's going to cost you so much to produce that 1,000 copy. But if you're going to sell 1,001 copy, it is still going to cost you that same amount, right? And so the increase in the cost to produce one more copy of that digital book, it's going to be negligible or it's going to be zero. So that has to be the way that we're looking at it. So that's the part about the assets. Now, in the conventional way of looking at business, you can acquire assets. However, those assets, in order to acquire those assets, you will require, huge capital investment. You would also require, in order for you to have to be able to resell the asset itself, someone else would have to give that up in order for you to resell that. So think about, property investment. Let's say you own a building and you are leasing out every room, to as an office space. Now, if you max out, in order for you to have another room to lease that out, you would actually have to buy another building, or you actually have to lease another building at least, right? And but if you're just going with that same building itself, someone would actually have to leave in order for you to get someone else in. And so that doesn't work for us, right? I mean, that's not the kind of business that we want to run. So first, you must have an asset that it's close to zero or negligible marginal cost. That's the key thing. And this asset should be able to, earn you a return over and over and over again. So those are the key criteria for an asset. So that's number one. Number two is that you, in your business itself, you will have to rely, a huge part of it has to be relied upon technology. And the reason why we're looking at technology is the ability to automate the entire process itself. So, like for example, if I, as right now, I'm crafting my refreshed version of a newsletter. And so, in that refreshed version of a newsletter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just write it one time, but that newsletter is going, that same newsletter is going to go out to people each and every time someone new signs up. And, you know, it wouldn't require me to get up in the middle of the night to realize that someone has subscribed and then for me to send that person that email, right? I mean, that would be silly. And again, that wouldn't have that time freedom. So it might meet the location, intellectual, and financial freedom, but it doesn't, fulfill the time freedom bit. I want to be able to sleep and each day, every week at least, every week, when I go to bed and when I get up in the morning, I will inevitably see people opting into my newsletter. And I wouldn't even have to lift a finger because I have already automated the process itself. And so, in order for you to think about how to automate the process and how you want to make this whole process work for you, then you got to watch the flywheel episode, right? So that's the second A. The third A in your business, like I said, you can be doing this, but unless you are able to accelerate the whole process itself, meeting that threshold of that 1 million is going to be really difficult. And so when we talk about accelerating, we are essentially talking about how we can grow really, really quickly. And the beauty of today's context is that the advertising platform, it's available to you and I at such an affordable rate that it would be silly for us to ignore or to avoid that platform. I mean, I shouldn't even be saying this because, I'm just introducing more people into the pool competing for that limited attention. But the point here is as follows, right? I'm teaching everything I know and whatever I've done. And so, in order to accelerate this whole process itself, you want to be able to leverage tools, even leverage other people to be able to help you get to that 1 million benchmark as quickly as you can. Okay, so is it possible? Yes, absolutely it's possible, right? Yes, absolutely it's possible. I've done the math, I've done the the process mapping. I mean, I'm not there yet, right? But as I started this entire process 138 days ago, I know it can be done, right? It can be done, and it can be done by a one person. And so that leads us to question number two. Question number two really it's the that question, just like the question that most people would want to ask Tim Ferriss. Do you actually work 4 hours in a week? And the answer, and that's one thing that I kind of cannot find myself in alignment to what Tim Ferriss is saying, is that if you listen to his answer, it's never a direct answer, yes or no. It is, some way of justifying the use of that phrase, the 4 hour phrase. And the reality is, I do not think he only works 4 hours. That said, what does it constitute to be work? That's an interesting question. So, without speculating what he does and how he does it, we're going to come back to this. So the question that I get a lot, it's, is it possible, is it really really possible to do it, just by one person? And and so if I were to answer this question, the way that I would answer this is as follows. Now, if this business, it's largely owned, operate, and overseen by one person, and it just requires this one person to be creating digital products to sell, that is possible. That said, in order, so remember earlier on we talked about assets, we talked about automation, we talked about accelerate. Now, in order to fulfill number one and number two, it is possible. It's possible to create assets one person. I'm doing it. It's possible to automate one person. I'm doing it. It's not possible to accelerate one person. And and so does that nullifies the premise of this one person, 1 million all digital business? Absolutely not. Because the whole premise here is it's still as follows. We are not looking at having a team of people that are under our payroll to be able to deliver the goods, to be able to deliver the product, to be able to deliver the service. What we're looking at right now is to be able to leverage people as and when we need them too, right? So it is only smart and intelligent to leverage of other people's time, talent, as well as network. I mean, if you think about it, if the entire thing is just one person talking and one person doing all this thing, no, it's not going to happen. And so it has to leverage off other people. Now, other people doesn't have to be your employees. Other people can be your partners. Other people could be within your network. Other people could be anyone who is able to help you achieve that goal, right? And so no one's going to do this alone, but the whole idea and the entire feasibility of it can be carried out, can be conceptualized and implemented. Doesn't mean it's being done by that one person. And so that's how I would justify that the premise of this one person, 1 million, all digital. Now, the question number three is, where do we start? Right? Where do we start? I mean, yes, I like this concept of first, to there's one person, 1 million, without venture funding, without external money. You bootstrap and you grow and you reinvest and you grow. I think this whole idea, the whole premise behind that, it's absolutely, absolutely possible. Now the question is, where do we start? And I would say that, you know, there isn't a boilerplate answer to that question, but there are a few fundamentals that it all starts with. And so I think, the way that if I were to do this again, this is the same way that I'll approach it, because I've done this whether in the form of a business or in the form of an ebook or in the form of an online course. I've done this many times. Now, the question is, how am I going to do this in such a way that is able to help people get to where they want to go? And and so the way to think about this is really as follows. The way to think about this is that we want to be looking at you, because you're going to be the person that is going to be running this business. You're going to be the person that's going to be coming up with the idea. You're going to be the person that's going to be executing on the idea itself. And so it starts with you. And the key thing about this whole process, where do we start? I believe strongly that it starts with proficiency. So when I say proficiency, it means that, it's got to be something that um, I can do it, right? It's got to be something that I can do it and I can do it well. So if you ask me, what is the premise of my 1 person, 1 million or digital business, the thing that I know that I can do well, it's teaching people how to learn and teaching people how to teach. And all this is done in an online way. I mean, if you look at teaching and learning in the online space, it's nothing new, right? It's nothing new. In fact, it has happened way before COVID-19 has happened. The thing is, with COVID-19, this entire process have been fast tracked. People have to embrace online learning and online teaching because that was the only way possible. Now that we are heading into this new normal and we are on this, the edge of chaos, we're not quite sure, right? Because there are some people who are thinking that we're going to revert to the old way, but the reality is, I think it's going to be a combination in the way that people are looking at how to do their work and how to get work done. It's going to be very, very different. And so the key idea here is fairly simple. I think it has to start with you and what are you proficient at. Now, you may be proficient at something, but the key question is this something that you're going to be passionate about? I'm passionate about teaching, I'm passionate about learning almost my entire life, entire working life. That's something that I have been doing and I enjoy it, and it's something that I am good at. Now, why this is important is because in the process of building this business, you are going to be faced with a lot of difficulties, a lot of setbacks, and it's not going to be a rosy thing. It's not going to be a one-way up journey, right? You might get from here to here, but the path will be, it's not going to be straight. And so without that passion itself, you are not going to be able to sustain that. And finally, I think finally, because this is not a hobby, this is not just a side project, this is $1 million business. At the end of the day, the premise is that people must be willing to pay. Without people willing to pay for what you are good at and what you're passionate about, then this entire thing will fall apart, right? And so those are the top 3 questions that I get asked all the time. As I said, if you got a question about the premise of this 1 person, 1 million or digital business, um, feel free to send me a question. Feel free to leave it in the comments, and I'll be more than glad to answer them. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.